The ship came without warning. One moment the sky was clear and blue, and the next moment something vast and dark blocked out the sun. People all over Earth stopped what they were doing and looked up. Cars crashed on highways. Children pointed from playgrounds. Old men dropped their coffee cups. The ship was larger than any city, larger than any mountain, and it hung in the sky like it had always been there. Yuna was working on the orbital station when it happened. She was an aerospace engineer, 32 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes from too many late nights. She was checking the life support systems when her colleague grabbed her arm and pulled her to the window. They both stared at the massive vessel that now sat between Earth and the stars. "What is it?" her colleague whispered. Yuna did not answer. She had no answer to give. The broadcast came 3 hours later. Every screen on Earth, every radio, every device that could receive a signal suddenly showed the same thing. A being appeared. It was tall and thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that held the light of ancient stars. When it spoke, its voice was calm and cold. "We are the Arbitrators. We have watched your species for 1,000 of your years. You have reached the point where you must be judged. One of you will be chosen. This one will be sent to a world we have prepared. If this one survives 30 rotations of that world, your species will be welcomed among the stars. If this one fails, your world will be closed to the galaxy for 10,000 years. The chosen one cannot be replaced. The trial cannot be refused. This is the law that governs all who wish to join the greater civilization." The being paused. Its eyes seemed to look at every person on Earth at once. "The selection will happen now." Yuna felt something pass through her. It was like a cold wind that touched not her skin, but something deeper. She saw the same shiver pass through her colleague. She imagined it passing through every person on the planet. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. "The one called Yuna has been chosen," the being said. "She will be collected in 12 of your hours." The screen went dark. For a long moment, Yuna could not move. Her colleague was staring at her with wide eyes. Then her communicator started buzzing. Then the alarm started. Then everyone was shouting. The next 12 hours were chaos. Yuna was brought back to Earth on an emergency shuttle. She was taken to a building she had never seen before, surrounded by soldiers and officials and scientists. People asked her questions she could not answer. They took her blood and scanned her brain and made her run on machines. They were looking for something special about her, some reason she had been chosen. They found nothing. She was ordinary. A good engineer? Yes. Smart? Yes. But not a soldier. Not a survivalist. Not a leader. Just a woman who was good at fixing things and solving problems. The military generals argued loudly. They wanted to send someone else, someone trained for combat. The politicians wanted to send someone who could represent humanity with dignity. The scientists wanted to send someone who could study the alien world and bring back knowledge. But the arbitrators had been clear. The chosen one could not be replaced. Yuna sat in a small room and waited. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table to make them stop. The door opened, and her brother walked in. Tai-Ho was 5 years younger than her, a biologist who worked at a research station in the Southern Ocean. He had flown for 6 hours to reach her. His eyes were red from crying, but he was trying to smile. He said. She replied. He sat down across from her. For a while, neither of them spoke. There was too much to say, and no good way to say it. "They are all arguing about you," Tai-Ho finally said. "The generals think you will die in the first hour. The politicians think you should memorize some kind of speech. The scientists want you to collect samples." Yuna laughed. It was a small, tired laugh. "What do you think?" Tai-Ho leaned forward. His eyes were serious now. "I think you are the smartest person I know. Not because you have the most knowledge, but because you know how to think. You see problems differently. You find solutions that other people miss. That does not help much against alien monsters on a death world." "Maybe not," Tai-Ho admitted. "But humans did not survive for 100,000 years because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we thought. We watched. We learned, we built tools and made plans. That is what you do, Yuna. That is who you are. Yuna looked at her brother. She wanted to tell him how scared she was. She wanted to cry and hold him and never let go. But she knew that if she started, she would not be able to stop. So instead, she nodded. I will try, she said. I will watch and learn and think. I will not try to fight everything. I will be patient. Taiho reached across the table and took her hand. Come back to me, he said. Please. I will try, she said again. 1 hour before the collection, Yuna was taken to a private room. The door opened, and the tall alien from the broadcast walked in. Up close, it was even more strange and beautiful. Its stone-like skin had patterns in it, like the rings of an ancient tree. Its eyes were deep and dark, and full of something that might have been wisdom, or might have been sadness. I am Vel, it said. I am the senior arbitrator. I have judged 10,000 species over 40,000 of your years. Yuna stood straight. She would not show her fear. Why are you here? Vel studied her for a long moment. I am here to tell you something that I have never told any other contestant. In all my years and all the trials I have watched, no species has ever passed by force alone. The ones who fight and kill and dominate, they always fail in the end. The ones who last the longest are the ones who understand that survival is not about defeating the world. It is about finding your place within it. Yuna felt her heart beating fast. Why are you telling me this? Because I am curious, Vel said. I have seen warriors and kings and great hunters. I have never seen what humans are. I want to know if you are something new. Before Yuna could respond, Vel turned and walked away. The door closed behind it. 20 minutes later, Yuna was taken to an open field. The arbitrator's ship hung overhead, blocking out the stars. A beam of light came down and touched the ground in front of her. She looked back once. Somewhere out there, Taiho was watching. The whole world was watching. Yuna stepped into the light. The world disappeared. She was gone. Yuna opened her eyes and found herself lying on hard ground. The sky above her was orange and purple, with 2 small suns hanging low on the horizon. The air was thin and strange, and every breath felt like she was drinking something sour. She sat up slowly and looked around. The land was rough and broken. Sharp rocks rose from the ground like teeth. In the distance, mountains covered in red dust touched the strange sky. There were no trees, no grass, just gray stone and patches of dark moss. The wind was hot and dry and carried the smell of something burning. Yuna stood up. She was still wearing the simple clothes she had been given before the transport. A thin shirt, loose pants, flat shoes. No tools, no weapons, no food, no water, nothing but herself. The first thing she did was find shelter. The 2 suns were moving fast across the sky, and she could feel the temperature changing. It had been hot when she arrived, but now it was getting hotter. She needed to get out of the open. She found a rocky outcrop with a small overhang that created shade. She crawled underneath it and sat with her back against the cool stone. Then she did something that the arbitrators had never seen before. She waited, high above the planet. On the great ship, the arbitrators watched through their machines. Aura, a younger arbitrator with sharp features and impatient eyes, made a sound of confusion. What is she doing? Aura asked. She just sits there. Vel, the senior arbitrator, watched the screen without expression. She is observing. Observing what? There is nothing there but rocks. There is much more than rocks, Vel said quietly. She is learning the world before she tries to live in it. Aura shook its head. The warriors from the Keth species immediately began hunting. The scholars from the Vora began building weapons. Even the peaceful Numa started gathering food within the first hour. This human does nothing. Then we will see if nothing is enough, Vel replied. On the planet below, Yuna watched everything. She watched the way the shadows moved as the 2 suns traveled across the sky. She watched small creatures come out from cracks in the rocks when the temperature dropped. She watched larger creatures follow them, hunting with quick movements and sharp teeth. She watched the wind patterns and noticed that dust always blew from the same direction in the morning and the opposite direction in the evening. She did not move from her shelter for 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, Una began to work. She had learned the patterns now. She knew when the predators hunted and where they slept. She knew which small creatures were prey and which were poisonous. She knew that water existed somewhere, because she had seen birds flying toward the eastern mountains every evening. The first thing she made was a cutting tool. She found a place where the rocks were dark and shiny, like glass. She remembered something her grandfather had told her when she was young. He had shown her how ancient humans made tools from stone, hitting one rock against another until a sharp edge formed. She tried it now. It was harder than she expected. The first stone shattered. The second cracked wrong. The third cut her hand and blood ran down her fingers. She wrapped the wound with a strip of cloth torn from her shirt and kept trying. By the end of the day, she had 3 rough blades. They were not pretty, but they were sharp. On the 5th day, she found the plants. They grew in the shadows of the largest rocks, low to the ground with thick stems and thin leaves. She watched the small creatures eat them without dying. She cut a small piece and touched it to her tongue. It was bitter, but not burning. She waited an hour. When she did not get sick, she ate more. On the 6th day, she followed the birds to water. It was a long walk through dangerous territory, but she had mapped the predator zones in her mind. She moved when they slept and hid when they hunted. The water source was a small spring that came up from the ground between 2 large boulders. She tasted it carefully. It was clean, but the spring was too far from her shelter. She needed a way to carry water. She spent 2 days weaving a basket from the tough fibers of the plant stems. Her first basket fell apart. Her second leaked. Her third held water for almost an hour before dripping empty. Her fourth worked. On the 9th day, she built her first trap. She had watched the small creatures long enough to know their paths. She placed a loop of braided plant fiber in their trail and weighted it with stones. In the morning, she found food waiting for her. High above, Aura watched with growing frustration. She moved so slowly, she wasted so much time on small things. The other species built fires and weapons in their first days. And where are those species now? Vel asked. Aura was silent. They both knew the answer. Those species had burned bright and fast. They had fought the world, and the world had won. Their bones lay scattered across the trial planet, buried under dust and time. This human builds small things, Vel continued. A blade, basket, a trap. Each thing is simple, but each thing makes the next thing possible. She is not trying to conquer this world in a day. She is trying to live in it for a lifetime. By the 10th day, Una had a system. Her shelter was secure. She had stored water in 3 different locations in case one was discovered by predators. She had dried meat from her traps and preserved plants wrapped in leaves. She had made a second set of tools and hidden them away from her main camp. She had not fought a single predator. She had not needed to. When they came near, she was already gone. When they searched for her, she was hidden. When they lost interest, she returned to her work. She was like water flowing around stones. She did not push against the world. She moved through it. On the night of the 10th day, Una sat in her shelter and looked up at the strange stars. Somewhere up there, the arbitrators were watching. Somewhere beyond them, Earth was waiting. Her brother was waiting. She thought about what Vel had told her. No species had ever passed by force alone. The ones who fought always failed. The ones who found their place within the world were the ones who lasted. Una did not know if she would survive 30 days. She did not know if her patience would be enough, but she knew one thing for certain. She would not die trying to be something she was not. She was not a warrior. She was not a hunter. She was a builder and a thinker and a watcher. And she would survive the only way she knew how. One careful day at a time. The wind blew cold across the rocks, and somewhere in the darkness, a predator howled. Una pulled her thin shirt tighter around her shoulders and closed her eyes. Tomorrow there would be more work to do. The storm came on the 11th day. Yuna saw it building in the distance, a wall of red and black clouds rolling across the mountains like an angry god. She had never seen anything like it. Lightning flashed inside the clouds, not white but deep, purple, and the thunder that followed shook the ground beneath her feet. She gathered what she could: water containers, dried food, her best tools. She carried them to a cave system she had discovered during her early exploration. She had never needed the caves before, but she had noted their location, just in case. Always just in case. But she was not fast enough. The storm hit before she reached the caves. The wind came first, so strong it knocked her off her feet. Then came the rain, but it was not like any rain on Earth. It fell in heavy sheets mixed with sharp particles of dust and stone. It cut her skin like tiny knives. She crawled forward on her hands and knees, unable to see, unable to breathe. Something hit her leg. A flying rock, she thought, or maybe a piece of her own shelter torn apart by the wind. Pain exploded through her body. She screamed, but the sound was lost in the roar of the storm. She kept crawling. She did not know how long it took her to reach the caves. It felt like hours. It might have been minutes. When she finally pulled herself inside the dark entrance, she collapsed on the cold stone floor and did not move. The storm raged for 2 days. Yuna lay in the darkness, drifting in and out of consciousness. Her leg was badly cut, deep enough that she could see the white of bone through the torn flesh. She was losing blood. She was cold. She was alone. On Earth, in the observation station, Taiho watched the screens with red eyes. He had not slept since the storm began. Around him, officials and scientists spoke in low voices. Some were already writing reports about the failure of the human trial. Some were preparing the public for bad news. "She is still alive," Taiho said, his voice rough. "Ah, the censors show she is still alive?" Hannah, the chief diplomat, put a hand on his shoulder. "The storm will end eventually. If she survives that long, there is still hope." But even Hannah did not sound like she believed it. In the cave, Yuna opened her eyes. The sound of the storm was fading. She could see a faint gray light at the cave entrance. Day had come again. She looked at her leg. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. If she did not close the wound, she would die. She knew what she had to do. She did not want to do it. She crawled deeper into the cave until she found what she needed. Dry moss, dead plant material, stones that could make sparks that she had stored. Emergency supplies here weeks ago, hidden in a crack in the wall. Another backup plan. Another just in case. It took her an hour to build a small fire. Her hands were shaking. Her vision kept going dark at the edges. She placed one of her stone blades in the flames and waited until it glowed red. Then she pressed it against the wound in her leg. The pain was beyond anything she had ever known. She screamed until her throat was raw. She bit down on a piece of leather until her teeth cracked. She felt her consciousness trying to slip away, and she fought it with everything she had. She could not pass out. If she passed out, the blade might fall and start a fire. If the fire spread, she would burn. She had to stay awake. When it was done, she fell back against the cave wall and sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. She had never felt so small. She had never felt so alone. For the first time since arriving on this world, she wanted to give up. She wanted to close her eyes and let the darkness take her, but she did not. She slept for a long time. When she woke, the storm was completely gone. Weak sunlight filtered into the cave entrance. She was thirsty and hungry, and her leg throbbed with every heartbeat. But she was alive. She dragged herself toward the entrance and looked outside. The world had changed. The storm had torn everything apart. Her shelter was gone. The rocks where she had stored supplies were scattered across the landscape. The spring where she collected water was buried under mud and debris. She had lost almost everything. "Well," she said to no one, "I will have to start again." It was then that she heard the sound. Scraping noise from deeper in the caves. She froze. She had assumed she was alone here. She had been wrong. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was not human. It was tall and thin, covered in scales that had once been green, but were now dull and gray. Its eyes were large and yellow and filled with something that might have been madness. Yuna reached for her knife. Wait, the creature said. Its voice was rough, like it had not spoken in a long time. I am not going to hurt you. I could not hurt you even if I wanted to. Look at me. I am nothing. Kept her knife ready, but did not attack. Who are you? My name is Keth. I was a contestant once. Like you, my species sent me here to prove our worth. The creature laughed, a bitter and broken sound. I failed. I survived the 30 days, but I broke the rules. I killed when I did not need to kill. I destroyed when I could have built. The arbitrators judged me unworthy and left me here as punishment. How long have you been here? Do not know anymore. Many years, many storms. I have watched others come and fail. Warriors and scholars and kings, they all die the same way. They fight the world until the world kills them. Una studied the creature. It was thin and weak, barely alive. It was no threat to her, and she saw something in its eyes that she recognized. Loneliness, despair, the look of someone who had given up hope long ago. She reached into her small pile of supplies and pulled out a piece of dried meat. It was one of the few things she had managed to save from the storm. She held it out toward Keth. The creature stared at her. What are you doing? I am offering you food. Why? We are competitors. Resources are limited. This is the trial. You should keep everything for yourself. Una smiled. It hurt her cracked lips, but she smiled anyway. Where I come from, we have a saying. Survival is easier with friends than alone. I cannot rebuild everything by myself. Not with my leg like this. But maybe together we can. Keth looked at the food. Then it looked at Una. Slowly, carefully, like an animal that had been hurt too many times, it reached out and took the meat. You are strange, Keth said. No species has ever shared with me before. Maybe it is time someone did. High above on the arbitrator's ship, Vel watched this exchange. Beside him, Aura made a sound of confusion. She gives away her food? After losing everything? This is foolish. This is wasteful. This is against all logic. Vel said nothing. But deep in his ancient eyes, something stirred. Something that looked very much like hope. Una and Keth sat in the cave entrance and watched the two suns set over the ruined landscape. They did not speak. They did not need to. They were both survivors. They both understood what it meant to keep going when everything said stop. Tomorrow, they would begin rebuilding. Together, the days after the storm were hard. But Una had something she did not have before. She had help. Keth knew the planet in ways she never could have learned on her own. He knew which caves flooded during storms and which stayed dry. He knew where the predators made their homes and when they changed territories. He knew the seasons, the patterns, the secrets that only came from years of watching and waiting, and Una knew how to build. On the 21st day, she stood at the edge of a small valley and looked down at what they had created. It was not much by Earth standards. A shelter made from stacked stones and woven plant material. A fire pit lined with rocks to contain the heat. Storage areas dug into the hillside where food and water would stay cool. But Una was not satisfied. She was thinking bigger. There, she said, pointing to a stream that ran along the bottom of the valley. That water is toxic. We cannot drink it. Keth nodded. I know. The blue moss makes it poisonous. I nearly died learning that lesson. But what if we could clean it? Keth looked at her with confusion. Clean it? How? Una smiled. She had been thinking about this for days. Back on Earth, she had studied water filtration systems for space stations. The principles were simple. You needed layers. Something to catch the large particles. Something to absorb the poisons. Something to let only clean water through. She found sand near the old spring that had been buried by the storm. She made charcoal by burning dried plants in a covered pit. She collected fine gravel from the rocky hills. Then she built a container from the tough plant fibers she had used for her baskets. Making the weave tight enough to hold everything in place, it took 3 days to build the filter. Keth watched her work with growing amazement. When she finally poured toxic water into the top, and clean water came out the bottom, he made a sound she had never heard him make before. He laughed. "You are a maker," he said. "Your species are makers. I understand now why you were different from the others." On the 24th day, Una started her second project. She found a rocky alcove that faced the suns for most of the day. She collected flat, light-colored stones and arranged them to reflect sunlight into the space. Then she planted the edible plants she had been cultivating inside. "What is this?" Keth asked. "A greenhouse," Una said. "The stones will trap heat. The plants will grow faster. We will have more food." "But why?" "You only need to survive 7 more days. After that, you will leave. Why build things you will never use?" Una stopped working and looked at Keth. His yellow eyes were genuinely confused. In his world, in the world of the trial, everything was about individual survival. You took what you needed. You used what you had. You did not think about tomorrow, because tomorrow might never come. "I am not building this for me," Una said quietly. "I am building this for whoever comes next." Keth stared at her. "I do not understand." "The Arbitrators send species here to be tested. You said you have watched others come and fail. What if the next ones had a better chance? What if they found clean water already flowing? What if they found plants already growing? What if they found maps that showed them the safe paths?" Keth was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was strange. "In all my years here, no one has ever thought about the ones who come after. Everyone fights for themselves. Everyone dies for themselves." "Then maybe that is why they fail," Una said. "Maybe survival was never meant to be something you do alone." High above, on the Arbitrator's ship, Vel called a gathering of the other Arbitrators. They stood in a great circular chamber. Dozens of ancient beings who had watched civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy. Vel activated a display that showed Una working on her greenhouse, explaining her plans to Keth, drawing maps in the dirt. "I asked you all to watch this trial closely," Vel said. "Tell me what you see," Ora spoke first. "I see a being who wastes resources. She builds things she does not need. She shares with a failed contestant who offers nothing in return. By any measure of efficiency, she is failing." Another arbitrator, old even by their standards, spoke next. "I see something different. I see a species that thinks beyond the moment. She is not just surviving. She is creating. Creating what?" Ora demanded. Vel turned off the display. "Hope," he said simply. "She is creating hope. Not for herself. For those who come after. In 40,000 years, no species has ever done this. They fight for survival. They struggle for dominance. They think only of themselves. This human thinks of the future. She thinks of others." On day 25, Una began carving maps. She used her stone tools to scratch detailed drawings into flat pieces of rock. She marked the water sources, both toxic and clean. She marked the predator territories and their hunting times. She marked the caves that were safe and the areas where the ground was unstable. She drew the plants that could be eaten and the ones that would kill. "You are making a guide," Keth said, watching her work. "Yes, for whoever comes next. What if no one comes? What if your species fails and the planet is left empty?" Una did not stop carving. "Then the maps will wait. Stone lasts a long time. Someone will find them eventually."
On day
27, the predators came. Una had known they would. She had been watching them for weeks, learning their patterns. A large pack of the apex hunters had been circling closer to the valley, drawn by the smell of food and the sounds of activity. She had prepared for this. "Get behind me," she told Keth. "Do exactly what I say." The predators emerged from the rocks, 6 of them, moving fast and silent. They were beautiful in a terrible way, all muscle and teeth and hunger. They spread out, surrounding the shelter, cutting off escape routes. Una did not run. She did not panic. She picked up a long stick she had prepared and struck a specific stone at the edge of the fire pit. The stone shattered and released a cloud of powder she had ground from certain plants. The powder caught the heat from the nearby coals and burst into a flash of bright light and sharp smell, The predators froze, blinded and confused. Now, Una said. She and Keth moved quickly, toward a narrow passage between the rocks. As they moved, Una triggered 2 more traps. Piles of stones fell, blocking paths. Ropes made of plant fiber pulled tight across the ground. The predators recovered and gave chase. But the traps slowed them down. By the time they reached the narrow passage, Una and Keth were already through, and the passage was too small for creatures so large to follow. They sat on the other side, breathing hard, listening to the frustrated growls of the hunters who could not reach them. You did not kill them, Keth said.
No.
You could have. Some of your traps could have been deadly. No. But I did not need to kill them. I only needed to escape them. Killing takes energy and resources. It makes other predators come to feed on the bodies. It changes the balance of the territory. Why kill when you can simply redirect? Keth was quiet for a moment. My species killed everything we could. We thought it proved our strength. The arbitrators said we had missed the point entirely. I never understood what they meant until now. The predators eventually lost interest and wandered away. Una and Keth returned to their valley. The shelter was damaged but not destroyed. The greenhouse was untouched. The maps were safe. That night, Una looked up at the stars and thought about the trial. 3 more days. 3 more days, and it would be over. She had survived storms and injuries and predators. She had built tools and shelters and systems. She had made a friend in a place where friendship should have been impossible. But more than that, she had left something behind. Not destruction. Not conquest. Not proof of strength. She had left a gift for the future. And she hoped, more than anything, that it would be enough. The 30th day began like all the others. Una woke in the shelter she had rebuilt, her body stiff and sore but still working. Her leg had healed into an ugly scar, a permanent reminder of the storm and what she had survived. She sat up and looked at the world outside. The 2 suns were rising over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The water filtration system was still running, clean water dripping steadily into a stone basin. The greenhouse plants were growing strong, already showing signs of new growth. The maps she had carved sat stacked near the entrance, ready for whoever might need them. Keth was already awake, sitting at the edge of the valley and watching the horizon. He had changed in the days they had spent together. His scales had gained some of their old color. His eyes were clearer. He no longer looked like a creature waiting to die. Today is the day, he said without turning around. Yes. Are you afraid? Una thought about the question. A month ago she would have said yes, without hesitation. She had been terrified when she first arrived, certain that she would die on this strange and hostile world. But now, after everything she had been through, fear seemed like something small and far away. No, she said. I did what I could. Whatever happens next is not in my control. Keth finally turned to look at her. I have watched many species face this day. They were all afraid. They begged the arbitrators for more time. They made promises and threats. They cried and screamed and fought. You were the first one who just accepted it. There is nothing else to do, Una said simply. I survived. I built. I helped where I could. If that is not enough for the arbitrators, then nothing will be. Worrying about it changes nothing. Sat together in silence and waited. The ship came at midday. It descended through the clouds like a great dark bird, blocking out the suns and casting a shadow across the entire valley. Una stood and walked to the center of the open ground where she had first arrived 30 days ago. Keth followed her, but stayed a few steps behind. A beam of light touched the ground, and Vel appeared. The senior arbitrator looked exactly as he had the first time Una met him, tall and ancient and unreadable. But something in his eyes was different. There was a warmth there that had not existed before. Una of Earth, Vel said. You have completed the 30 rotations of the trial world. I am here to deliver the judgment of the arbitrators. Una nodded but said nothing. There were no words that would change what was about to happen. Before I speak the verdict, I wish to explain something. Vel continued. The trial is not what most species believe it to be. We do not send beings here to test their strength or their intelligence. We have seen strong species destroy themselves. We have seen intelligent species burn their worlds to ash. Strength and intelligence are not enough. He paused and looked around at the valley, at the shelter and the greenhouse, and the water system and the carved maps. We test for something else, something rarer. We test for wisdom. We test for the understanding that survival is not about conquering your environment. It is about finding balance with it. It is about building rather than destroying. It is about thinking of the future rather than only the present. Vel turned back to Yuna. In 40,000 years we have tested 10,000 species. Some passed. Many failed. But no species has ever done what you have done. You did not just survive. You created. You built systems that will outlast you. You made maps for those who come after. You shared your resources with the stranger who offered nothing in return. You faced predators and chose not to kill when killing was not necessary. On Earth in the observation station, Tai-Ho was standing so still he had forgotten to breathe. Hannah and Dun-Ho stood beside him, their faces frozen with hope and fear. Around the world, billions of people watched the screens in silence, waiting for the words that would decide humanity's fate. The arbitrators have reached a decision, Vel said. Humanity has passed the trial. For a moment, Yuna did not react. The words seemed impossible, like they belonged to a dream. Then, slowly, the reality of it sank in. She had done it. Earth was saved. Her people would join the stars. On Earth, the silence exploded into celebration. Tai-Ho fell to his knees and wept. Hannah started laughing and could not stop. In cities and villages and homes across the planet, people hugged each other and cried and shouted with joy. Humanity had been judged, and humanity had been found worthy. But Vel was not finished. There is more, he said. The arbitrators have watched many trials, but we have never seen a species like yours. You think in ways that other species do not? You build for generations you will never see. You find hope in places where hope should not exist. These are rare qualities. These are the qualities we have been searching for. He raised one long hand and made a gesture toward the sky. Another beam of light appeared, and 3 more arbitrators descended to stand beside Vel. We wish to offer you a position, Vel said. Not as a representative of Earth. Earth will have its own ambassadors for that. We wish you to join the arbitrators as an observer. You would travel with us, watch other trials, offer your perspective. No species has ever been offered this honor. But we believe humanity has something to teach us, and we wish to learn. Yuna stared at him. The offer was beyond anything she could have imagined. To travel the galaxy, to witness the testing of other species, to be part of the group that decided the fate of civilizations. I have one condition, she said. Vel raised what might have been an eyebrow. Name it. Keth comes with me. Yuna turned and looked at her friend, standing a few steps behind her with an expression of shock on his gray face. His species failed the trial, but he did not fail me. He helped me when he had no reason to. He taught me what I needed to know to survive. If I pass, he passes. That is my condition. The arbitrators looked at each other. Aura made a sound of protest, but Vel raised a hand to silence him. This is unprecedented, Vel said. So am I, Yuna replied. So is everything I have done on this planet. You said you want to learn from humanity. This is what we are. We do not leave our friends behind. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, Vel smiled. It was a strange thing to see on his ancient stone face, but it was unmistakably a smile. Your condition is accepted, he said. Keth will join you as an observer. Perhaps he still has something to offer, and we simply did not see it before. Keth looked at Yuna, with eyes that were wet with something she had never seen in him before. Gratitude. Hope. A future he had thought was lost. Forever. Thank you, he whispered. Not thank me, Yuna said. You saved my life in that cave. You taught me how to survive. We are even. The arbitrator's ship prepared to leave. Yuna took one last look at the valley she had called home for 30 days, the shelter she had built with her own hands, the greenhouse that would keep growing long after she was gone, the water system that would provide clean water for whoever came next, the maps carved in stone that would guide future survivors. She had arrived on this world with nothing. She was leaving behind everything she could give. "Are you ready?" Vel asked. Yuna looked at Keth, who nodded. She looked up at the strange purple sky and the two suns setting over the mountains. She thought about Taiho waiting for her on Earth. It's about Hannah preparing humanity for its new place among the stars. It's about all the people who had watched and hoped and prayed. "Yes," she said. "I am ready." The beam of light surrounded her and Keth, and the world began to fade. As she rose toward the ship, Yuna allowed herself one final thought. The arbitrators had ruled that survival was the test, and she had passed. Not with weapons or strength or anger, with patience, with tools, with kindness, with the understanding that the greatest victory was not conquering a world, but leaving it better than she found it. That was the human way, and now the galaxy would learn what all that meant. The light took her, and she was gone, rising toward the stars that waited to welcome her home.